What I have seen over my 35 plus years in working with very large companies and very small companies is the number one driver of profit growth is people growth.
Welcome to the New Talent Playbook Podcast, your go-to resource for building exceptional teams and thriving businesses. Each episode delivers actionable insights on harnessing offshore talent, integrating innovative technology, cultivating a vibrant company culture, and attracting and retaining top performers. Subscribe now to never miss an episode. For more resources, visit the newtalentplaybookpodcast.com, where you can download this episode's free workbook designed to help you apply today's insight to your business. And now, here's your host, Rob Levin.
Today, I'm here with Mike Goldman, a leadership team coach with over 35 years of experience helping organizations build high-performing teams. Mike is the author of Breakthrough Leadership Team, Performance Breakthrough, and the USA Today bestseller, The Strength of Talent. He's worked with world-class clients, including Disney, Verizon, and Polo Ralph Lauren, as well as countless small and mid-sized businesses. He's also a TEDx speaker who presents internationally to business leaders at IBM, Allstate, Vistage, EO, and many more. In fact, I saw Mike speak to my Vistage group, and that went over really well. Mike also hosts the Better Leadership Team Show. Mike, great to see you. Let's dive right in.
Great to see you. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So in your book, The Strength of Talent, you open up with I think it's a very striking statistic. Only 2% of business leaders feel that their performance management system, delivers exceptional value. Why is this such a problem, and how is it holding companies back in terms of their growth strategies?
The reason it's such a problem is that what I have seen over my 35 plus years in working with very large companies and very small companies is the number one driver of profit growth is people growth. It's not a new strategy. It's not a new marketplace. It's not a new product. All those things are important, of course, but the number one driver of profit growth is people growth. And when we think of people growth and what processes as leaders we put in place for people growth, we think about things like annual and quarterly performance reviews, 360s, joint goal setting, performance improvement plans. Some of those work better than others, but all those things come together into this thing we call performance management. And this study that shows, and didn't surprise me at all, that shows only 2% of leaders believe their performance management is adding real value, means a lot of that stuff, and frankly, in my mind, especially the annual and/or quarterly performance review, which I think is the worst invention ever created in business, those things don't work. Things like 360s work okay, but how often are we doing them? And the fact that we keep pounding our heads against the wall as leaders, doing these same things that only work 2% of the time, to me is crazy. So the book and work I've been doing with my clients really over the last 10 years or so is about a framework that I've seen works a whole lot better.
Okay, so let's dive into that, Mike. Annual and quarterly reviews are ineffective. Walk us through how the talent density system changes the way we should be evaluating talent and our teams.
So it's really a 5-step process, and I'll go through the 5 steps in and of themselves are not rocket science. It's kind of when you go deeper that you see the differences. But just to put it all in context, the 5 steps are, number one, it's got to start with aligning around expectations with each of your team members, expectations around productivity, as well as expectations around culture fit. I have seen unclear expectations. They don't lead to unclear results. Unclear expectations lead to unacceptable results. So it's got to start with setting expectations. And as simple as that sounds, most leaders fail at that first step. From those expectations, we now need to assess performance against those expectations. And you already know I don't mean a annual or quarterly performance review. It's a very specific process into how you assess performance against productivity and culture fit, and how you share and challenge those assessments as a leadership team. That drives the third steps, which is the assessment doesn't matter without agreeing on some massive set of action you're going to take based on that assessment. So the third step is action. What action should we be taking for our highest performers, for our lowest performers, for our mediocre folks? The fourth step is driving accountability. And I don't mean accountability to make sure our direct reports do the things we're telling them to do. What I mean here by accountability is driving leadership accountability to continue to build strength of talent, continue to build what I call talent density on the team. So there's an accountability piece, which includes how do we measure strength of talent? The idea, what I said a couple minutes ago, the number one driver of profit growth is people growth. That sounds nice, but if we have no way to measure people growth, then how do we hold each other accountable for that? So there is a measure that we can talk about that I call the talent density indicator. And then the fifth step is cascade. How do we take that process and cascade it down through the organization?
Gotcha. Okay, so there's a lot there. And what kept popping into my mind because we run on EOS is, can you go into a little bit more detail about what these assessments look like? Are these weekly KPIs and quarterly rocks like we have in EOS, or are we talking about something entirely different?
Yeah, typically for the folks that do assess performance, they're either using something like EOS, the get it, want it, capacity to do it, or they're using, I don't know if you've ever seen the 9-box, which I'm not really a fan of. 9-box, a lot of people use is kind of, there's two axes, performance and potential. And in my talent density framework, there are two axes to assess performance. One is productivity. And by the way, productivity does not equal performance. They are not the same thing. In my mind, performance are two things. One is productivity, which is the first axis. The second is culture fit. And culture fit is typically very hard to measure. But the way I think about culture fit is if you have a set of core values, it's how well is this individual living and breathing those core values every day, those non-negotiable behaviors that make up your culture. Are they modeling the core values? Are they just living them? Are they occasionally having problems? Are they frequently having problems? And if you don't have a set of clear core values, is this person making the people around them better or worse? Are they adding to the culture you want to create or subtracting? So you've got these two axes of productivity. And by the way, productivity is not how long and hard somebody is working. Someone may be working long and hard because they're not very productive. Productivity is about results,
right?
Measurable results. So if you've got productivity and culture fit, someone that is high in both productivity and culture fit, I call them high performing team members. If someone is living the culture okay, but they're low in productivity, they're low producing. If they're not living your non-negotiable core values, I don't care how productive they are low culture fit and they're hurting your team. And the folks that aren't high enough to be high performing, they're not low enough to be low performing, those are your medium performing folks. And that sounds very simple, and I keep it simple on purpose. I think things like 9-box get too complicated. Behind that are a very specific set of guidelines as to how you measure productivity and culture fit, and guidelines that really try to take this art and make it more of a science, a little bit more of a math problem. So there are real guidelines as to whether someone is high performing. I think they're a superstar, and therefore I'm going to put them in high performing. We need a real way to measure them.
I like the idea that there is a little bit of complexity to that, because if you go to something like EOS with the GWC that gets it one, it has the capacity to do it. I think it's a little too simplistic. It's very easy to just say yes, yes, yes.
And the problem with that is around every leadership team table. And by the way, a big part of the assessment is you assess together as a team. It's not, I'm going to assess somebody and then secretly send it to HR so they could put it in their permanent file. No, it's leaders getting together quarterly and assessing the performance of everyone one level down. So you can challenge each other, and doing that together and having the guidelines become the truth serum. It's very easy for a leader to want to protect their people. But when you've got very specific guidelines and you've got the leadership team holding you accountable, you start to get rid of the problem of having easy graders and hard graders around the table. You're making this a lot more fact-based.
Yeah. So when you say that it's for everybody one level below, who else is involved in the evaluation process?
Yeah. So remember I said the fifth step in the process is cascading it down through the organization. It's really important to start this with the leadership team, which in my mind means the CEO and the CEO's direct reports that get together quarterly and they assess their direct reports one level down. Now, if you're in a company that's a little bigger, you're going to have multiple levels of leadership down through the organization, but it starts with the senior leaders. And I have companies that thankfully fall in love with this process. And right away they say, we've got to do this at all levels of the organization. And it's almost always the wrong decision. It takes a few quarters to get this right as a senior leadership team, to have the open, honest debates with each other, to hold people accountable, to know how to coach and develop people, to move them kind of up and to the right on the framework, to go from low to medium to high performing. And if you try to roll it out to folks without necessarily a great level of leadership maturity, we're going to do it for all levels of the organization, it can actually hurt more than help. So I suggest get it right as a senior leadership team before you start cascading it down to all levels of the organization. Eventually, everybody is part of this, but it shouldn't start that way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because if you don't get it right in the beginning, then you're cascading something that's incorrect down through the organization. And then you have to go back and fix it.
And it's not only cascading something incorrect, like part of what you're doing in the quarterly, and I call it the quarterly talent assessment meeting, part of what you're doing there is you are looking at your highest performing folks and saying, what do we need to do to challenge them? What do we need to do to re-recruit them? Should we be promoting them? You look at the medium performers. What do we need to do to move them up? You're looking at the low performers and saying who could be coached up and who needs to be coached out. And you're making some of those tough decisions. And the challenge is if you cascade this down too quickly, without the right change management, without the right communication, without the right leadership development, imagine you could have two different kinds of conversations, whispers in the hallway. One whisper is, did you hear? Could you believe our leaders get together once a quarter to figure out who they're going to fire? Like, what kind of company do we work with? Now, the other whisper in the hallway, if you do it right, could be, hey, have you heard? Do you know that our company, our leaders get together once a quarter for the whole purpose of trying to help them figure out how to help us be better?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that an amazing company we work for? Now, by the way, both of those things are actually true.
Right.
But so the messaging and the change management becomes super important.
The reviews are in, and leaders are calling Rob Levin's new book a game changer. The New Talent Playbook, the ultimate guide to building your dream team, is now available. And it's your roadmap to winning the war for talent and scaling with total confidence. Don't just take our word for it. Order your copy today and see why it's a must-read for every SMB leader. Find it on Amazon.com or learn more at thenewtalentplaybook.com.
It makes a lot of sense, Mike. I want to double back to a couple things. I'll do these one at a time that you mentioned that I think are worth exploring a little bit further, that you kind of alluded to. One is you mentioned somebody who's very productive but doesn't fit in culturally. And that's actually not necessarily a good performer. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? I personally believe that somebody who's not a cultural fit needs to be coached out even faster than the person who's not a productive fit. What are your thoughts on that?
My first thought is yes, 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 I agree with you. And the reason for that is that if you've got someone who is not living your culture, they're not living your core values, which, by the way, doesn't make them a bad person.
Right.
One of your core values might be we lift each other up and we collaborate. And there may be someone you've mistakenly hired who is not about the team. They want to be in the corner by themselves, curing cancer, and there may be a place for them, but it's not your team. So if someone's not living your culture, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. It means they're a bad fit. But what I want to challenge you to think about is think about someone in your organization that's not living your core values. How coachable are they? And I would say, as much as, hey, I'm a coach, I would love to say everybody's coachable. That's BS. If someone's not living your core values, trying to coach someone to live your core values that are not already living your core values is like trying to coach someone to become someone they are not.
Right.
Can they fake it if you put them on a performance improvement plan and threaten their job security in 90 days? Yeah, most people can fake it, but then they go back to who they really are.
Right.
So the challenge is low culture fit 9 out of 10 times is not very coachable. But if you've got someone who's living the culture, but they're low in productivity, they're low producing, those folks tend to be a lot more coachable. Now, are they always coachable to get where you need them to be? No, some people don't have the capability, but they're more coachable. So there is a real difference between low producing and low culture fit. And my people come to me and say, Mike, what do you do about the high performing jerks? And to me, the vocabulary we use is really important. And in the way I define things, there's no such thing as a high performing jerk. You could be a highly productive jerk, but high performing is both productivity and culture fit. And if they're low culture fit, in my mind, I don't care how productive they are. They could be your number one salesperson. If they're low culture fit, they're hurting the people around them. I'm with you. They don't belong on the team and they're low performing.
Yep. Well said. The other thing you kind of alluded to a little bit is that a lot of people spend a lot of time on their weakest performers. And if you think that's the wrong approach, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, you don't create greatness by fixing weakness. You create it by maximizing strengths. And the biggest, I think absolutely the biggest mistake. There are a lot of mistakes leaders make in coaching and developing, growing their people. The biggest mistake is, including me, I made this mistake for many years. Most leaders overinvest in their low performers and underinvest in their high performers. Your high performers are the folks that you could leverage to be great. Your high performers are the ones that if they're not growing with you, they're going to grow with somebody else.
Right.
And if you just kind of picture this, imagine day in and day out, you were spending the majority of your bandwidth coaching, developing your lowest performing team members. First off, how does that make you feel? Right? That's stressful.
Yep.
But when we do that, when we're coaching and developing our lowest performing team members, whether it's low producing, low culture fit, and we talked about the differences there, but when we're at that day after day, how many of them go from low performing to high performing? Let's be honest, it's very few, right? Does it happen? Sure, but it's rare. Do they improve? Well, yeah, I think they improve. They go from, typically, if you could picture this, they go from kind of unacceptable performance to maybe now they're acceptable. They go from low performing to they're approaching mediocre. Now, when you're spending all that time with your lowest performing folks and you're saying things to your highest performing folks like, hey, keep up the good work. Thank God I don't have to worry about Rob. Rob just does a great job all on his own. When we ignore our highest performing folks, what happens? Well, some of them, again, leave and go somewhere else where they can grow. But let's be optimistic. Let's say they stay.
Right.
What I've seen is they stay, but they get a little stale.
Yeah.
You're ignoring them. You're not challenging them. You're not increasing their responsibility.
They subconsciously bring their performance down. I don't think they do it consciously. I think they subconsciously do it.
I think you're right. And so remember, keep this picture in your head. You got your low performers that have gone from unacceptable to approaching mediocrity.
Yeah.
Then you've got your highest performers that consciously or subconsciously, does their performance go from high performing to low? Typically not, but they're going to drop a little bit.
Yeah.
So what happens is when we focus so much of our time with our lowest performers, we end up with higher low performers and lower high performers. And the picture in your head should be this idea of now you've got this thing I call polished mediocrity. And that is not a recipe for success. That's not a recipe for great nights of sleep as a leader.
Or big celebrations. Sure.
We need to spend time maximizing the strengths of our team, working with our best people. And it doesn't mean we ignore the low performing, but we got to make some decisions whether they could be coached up or coached out and get on with it and spend time with our highest performing team members.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of research lately for my Substack and talking about high performers and low performers and why these A players are so important, put the title aside. And the research shows that a high performer compared to a low performer is 4 to 10 times more valuable, like not 20% more, but 4 to 10 times more valuable. That's a very significant difference. And that supports everything you're saying, right?
Yeah, the quote I always use that, and I agree with you, but the quote I use is not quite that number. It's from a gentleman named Kip Tyndall, who is the founder and CEO of the Container Store. CEO for many years, he was the founder. And he had this philosophy of people he called 1 = 3. And it says 1 superstar performer equals the productivity of 3 mediocre performers. Now, I agree with you. I think it may be 1 = 4 or 1 = 10 in some cases. But what it tells us is we could pay our superstars double and still get a better return on investment than a whole bunch of mediocre folks running around.
Yeah, I've seen this firsthand from a number of my friends who are founders who paid some of their top people what other people would say was insane amounts of money. And it paid off in performance. It paid off in allowing the business owner to sleep, like this person's not going anywhere. And then I'm thinking in particular of 2 people who exited with insane multiples, where not only that, but when they exited, they were actually able to not have to stay on for three years.
Yeah, and think about why that's the case. It's a beautiful example, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're building a team around you of those highest performing folks, superstar level, now the business is not as reliant on you. And now not only could you go take a vacation for a month and the business is stronger when you get back because you got out of everybody's hair, but to your point, you now have a much more saleable business for more multiples without a long earn out. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I want to go back to another thing that you said earlier, actually right at the beginning of the conversation. You basically said growth really comes from talent, which anybody who's read my book, New Talent Playbook, that's what I talk about. That's really what the whole book is about. What does that mean in practice? How is that a true statement that it's about people as opposed to going into another market? And how does your talent density framework help with that?
So first off, the numbers back it up. So there's a Boston Consulting Group study that looked at 1,200 organizations and found those organizations that they characterized as talent magnets, which means they were strongest at 20 different characteristics of leadership and talent development. Those companies grew. Oh God, I'm not going to get the numbers exactly right, but they grew, I think it was 40 or 50% faster and were 20 or 25% more profitable. And I had those numbers memorized and they flew out of my head because I have them in my book and I use them all the time. But there are numbers that back up how big this is. And we know this from the stress we have when we have the wrong people on the team and the way we make that real. It's nice that a lot of companies say people are our greatest asset. That's a bullshit statement for the most part. We say that, but if people are your greatest asset, that would mean that your number one priority as a leader is growing the people on your team. And it should be. When you think back to the 4x or 10x productivity of a high performer, or if you look at the Boston Consulting Group number of growing faster and being more profitable, if you are developing your talent in the right way, you show me another strategy that is going to consistently get you that kind of return on investment. You show me that developing a new product is that sure, or entering a new market that you're that sure of it giving you that kind of return on investment. I don't think there's any other investment that's quite that good. And by the way, not only does it bring you back more dollars, not only is it an ROI, but you get a chance to sleep better at night. So it really means getting real about saying my number one priority is growing the people on my team. And what does that mean? That means I need to be aligned around expectations with them. That means I need to be assessing performance. That means I need to be taking massive action with people and following up and holding myself accountable. It really means, and this is the big missing piece, it means we've got to measure people growth. Because if we don't measure it, like there's the cliche that we've all heard, and it's a cliche because it's mostly true, you can't manage what you don't measure. Right. And if what I'm saying is true, the number one driver of profit growth is people growth. Do we measure profit growth? Of course we do. If I asked you about profit growth, you can tell me down to the 10th% how you're doing compared to last year and how you're doing compared to budget. But if I ask most leaders how you're doing on people growth, I get answers like, oh, it's pretty good. We're almost caught up in our annual performance reviews. So we need a measure. So I've created this measure called the TDI, the Talent Density Indicator, that basically measures how we're doing there. And it's a simple measure of the percent of folks that are high performing minus the percent that are low performing. So the number goes anywhere from negative 100% to positive 100%. And we need to be seeing the right trend, that we're growing our people, and we need to hold every leader accountable.
Just like you're measuring
their TDI.
Growth. Yeah, just like you're measuring revenue growth. Yeah.
When you think of key performance indicators, there are leading indicators and lagging indicators, right? A lagging indicator is the measure of a result. Anything on your P&L is a lagging indicator, right? Profit is a lagging indicator. A leading indicator is the measure of an activity that drives that result. I believe the TDI, which is what I call it, the talent density indicator, it's the mother of all leading indicators. If that number goes up, your profitability will grow up. Your revenue will increase. Your profitability will increase. We need to focus on growing our people, number one.
Just think about, this is for the audience, just think about some of the other things Mike said. You can go into another market, right? You can buy another business, blah. You do all of these things. All of those things, by the way, need people to execute on them, right? So that's just another way to think about it.
And they come with risk. Whereas I'm not sure there's a lot of risk in coaching and developing your people.
Right. You know what? I overcoached last quarter. I can't do that again.
You can, but you can overcoach a low performer.
Yes.
When it's time to cut the cord. So yeah.
Fair point. Mike, this has been awesome. And by the way, for our listeners, for our audience, there's a few things that really resonated with me that Mike talked about that were just underlying trends. And I want to just point them out before we say goodbye here. One is the importance of talent and the importance of leading talent. The second is the importance of culture. To me, they go hand in hand. But first, you have to appreciate talent, I think, before you're going to really invest in culture. And of course, listeners and readers of the book know that I talk about this all the time. But there's two other things that I think are a little bit more subtle that I really heard. Number one was clarity on just about everything between core values, what you're being measured on, et cetera. And the last thing I heard, which I really appreciate, because you mentioned some 9-box framework that other people use, is the simplicity of all of it, right? Keeping it simple. This way people don't say, I'm going to do this tomorrow, but I'm going to do this right now, and it's important. So thank you for sharing all of that. And I just wanted to wrap it up in a pretty little bow. Mike, where can people find out more about you and the strength of talent and the talent density framework?
Yeah, so if you're interested in all this, want to learn more, learn how to implement it, my book, The Strength of Talent, very proud. It was a USA Today bestseller. You could certainly get it on Amazon. If you go to strengthoftalent.com, it comes with some bonus goodies you can get as well. My website, if you want to know more about me and what I do and how I might be able to help you, is mike-goldman.com. And then I have a podcast, which Rob, we're going to get you on soon, called The Better Leadership Team Show, where I have solo episodes and guest episodes where we talk about all this incessantly. So if you got some value and want to hear more, go to The Better Leadership Team Show as well.
Awesome. Mike, thanks again for sharing all of these incredible insights with our audience.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. The New Talent Playbook podcast is brought to you by Work Better Now. Don't forget to review, subscribe, and download the workbook for this episode at the link below. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on LinkedIn at the New Talent Playbook Podcast or visit thenewtalentplaybookpodcast.com.